Welcome back to our first YouTube only piece of content. This is the first content that Pat and I have made together that is just supposed to be on YouTube. I think we're supposed to be live streaming this, but we're obviously not. So I guess we're kind of failing there. But Pat, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. Obviously, this conversation is extra special for the reasons you just mentioned. Let's see how it goes.
All right. So we're going to be talking about the Tabletop Simulator Season 7 affiliation breakdown. And really, what we're focusing on here is what are the affiliations that want to be taken with other people, other affiliations, and what are the affiliations that kind of want to stand alone on the mountaintop, so to speak. And I think let's start with the affiliations that don't, that I guess people have been submitting the primarily amount of rosters that are going to be taking mono affiliation. And those are kind of what Avengers, Brotherhood, Convocation, Guardians, and is that about it, Pat?
Yeah, those are the big four. Now, obviously, there's exceptions even in these, right?
Oh, and
Um,
Uncanny X-Men is the other one that was weird.
oh, you're right. That's true. That's true. So, obviously, there's exceptions where not every single person that plays these affiliations is playing single affiliation, but the lion's share are. And I think this indicates a couple of things. I think it indicates the depth of the affiliation in terms of a large number of affiliated characters, very versatile. And it indicates that they can do a game plan on any kind of crisis, right? Any kind of crisis combination. They can pick 3 secures and 3 extracts that work well for them, and they can have a plan against whatever their opponent is going to pick, purely inside of their affiliation.
I do think it's interesting too. These affiliations obviously have slightly larger roster sizes than average. Brotherhood
Mm-hmm.
just got a big bump recently. Convocation actually released really wide. Avengers is, of course, Avengers. And I think Avengers is the one that's most interesting to me, right? Where Avengers used to be the splash affiliation because they had so many pieces that they had kind of borrowed and stolen from other affiliations. And now, 25 of the 41 submitted rosters are mono Avengers.
Yeah, which is a really nice change for them. But you know what, TT? I don't think it's purely about roster size, right? Because although Avengers are the biggest
Mhm.
and the others have like a fine size, Convocation is probably around the average. And Guardians um, is maybe around the average too. But you know, there's other affiliations like Cabal, for example, which are really, really big, but aren't playing in the same way. So I think it's also about the quality of the characters and their synergy with each other. And I expect in the case of Convocation and Guardians, and probably a little bit of Brotherhood, it's also about the fact that these characters aren't found in that many other places, right? There's very few Guardians of the Galaxy that you can take affiliated in any other team.
I think some of it too, to your earlier point, has to come back to how do you plan on playing that team, right? Are you
Mhm.
able to take these pieces that are, let's assume, Guardian attrition based, slap them into a second affiliation and have them be valuable, have them be a useful second affiliation, or are we just multi affiliating at that point to multi affiliate?
Yes. I think that some of the multi affiliations with these teams are definitely just born of the circumstance, right? Where with Avengers, it's easy to include characters like Black Panther and then be like, oh, I guess I can play Wakanda, right? It's easy to include She Hulk or a Blade or Cable and quickly discover that you don't have to do much to have a second affiliation, but you actually might not be intending to use that affiliation very much. And um, the number of pure teams for these affiliations might actually be even higher than the data suggests.
Yeah, so I don't. Were you surprised that Avengers or Black Order or Convocation are mostly mono affiliated?
I was a little bit surprised with Convocation because they've got some really powerful characters that are good in other affiliations as well. And their roster is not that deep. But certainly Avengers, I think, can handle everything. And Black Order and Guardians have kind of their own game plans that work just fine and don't need help. So I guess my answer is mostly no. I think it makes sense. Convocation is the big surprise for me.
So Convocation, obviously, taking in 23 rosters or 29 rosters, 23 times as mono, and then 3 times with Defenders and 3 times with Midnight Suns. The Midnight Suns makes a little bit of sense. Why do you think people are splashing in Defenders? Is it just character
See,
overlap?
I think this is character overlap. This is exactly what I was talking about, right? I think all of these examples potentially are just ones where you happen to have these characters anyway.
So you just,
Um,
yeah, that's fair.
right?
Which is like, you don't even have to have the intention to play the second affiliation. It's just I accidentally dual affiliated here.
right. I've got Ancient One, I've got Magic, I've got Classic, Doctor Strange. Boom, I'm Defenders.
And Wong in 10% of your rosters.
That's it, exactly. Wong is a piece that ties all three of those affiliations together, right? He's affiliated in all three of them. So he is probably doing his fair share of the work there.
And to be fair, too, numbers do skew a little bit here if you're if you end up with a roster that can play in 3 or 4 affiliations, because the way I did this math, I do technically double count those. So one of the interesting ones I saw, which is really interesting, Black Order, which used to be one of the great mono affiliations, has now not been taken mono affiliated at all. And we kind of expected this because of the lack of flexibility they have to hit some threat values here. But Black Order is only taken as a not a second affiliation, but only taken in dual affiliation rosters.
Hmm.
With Web Warriors kind of leading the right way. I know Mike DeLuke has been loud about how he liked them and obviously won LVO with them. And then Criminal Syndicates and Guardians kind of rounding that out. What do we think about Black Order here?
Yeah. The changes to gems completely revolutionized Black Order, right? They went from being incredibly demanding on your roster slots to the point where it was very hard to fit in a second affiliation, to being so easy on your roster slots that it's now almost trivially easy to dual affiliate. Um, it's interesting how much that has changed, and it's really due to the power of Thanos plus Corvus plus Proxima. The fact you only need those three characters and you can play Black Order. You don't need anybody else. Okay, they actually don't have that many other characters to add, even if they wanted to, but they are a 3 character affiliation, and there are no other Black Order characters, competitively speaking, that you need to consider when you're building your roster. It's purely for fun.
And I think that 3 character affiliation, as we've talked about a lot, is really 2 characters, right? We have the husband and wife couple, and then we have Thanos. And both of those modules are really easily splashed into different things if you need a little bit of control coming out of Thanos, or if you've just decided you want murder today and you want Corvus and Proxima.
Great point. So not only do they um, leave a lot of room for another affiliation, but they also work really well as ways to enhance that affiliation. So they give and take. Doesn't surprise me at all that they're popular and that they do well with dual affiliations. I think you can basically just put them with anybody.
I think one of the other ones, and we can wrap up with this one that I thought was really interesting, was Criminal Syndicate, which in less than half of their rosters are taking mono or Criminal Syndicate. And criminals have just been splashed kind of everywhere, right? There's Web Warriors criminals, right? There's Spider Verse criminals, which could obviously just be overlap. There's Dark Dimension criminals, because why not, right? We have a couple Cabal rosters, which, sure, we can do that, right?
Hmm.
Black Order, which we talked about previously, Avengers, obviously, and there was even an Asgard Criminal Syndicate roster here. So Criminals seems to be the most flexible there. And I guess that kind of makes sense, right? They have a good core. It's not a very large core. Those characters fulfill their roles in other affiliations, and you can kind of just bleed them into things where if you don't get the crisis where you want to sit on things well, this is kind of my fallback, right?
Yeah. You're right that it's partly because their roster's really big and they have a lot of overlap. So some of these affiliations are once again just convenient and not.
Cabal being the obvious one, right?
Yeah, and Spider Foes as well, with Kingpin being a Spider
Yep.
Foe, Mysterio, um, and Green Goblin. So some of that exists. I think it's actually not that they're flexible, but it's the opposite, right? I think the teams that are able to stand on their own as a single affiliation, it's because that affiliation is flexible in any circumstance. And criminals are not flexible in any circumstance. Criminals shine in the right circumstance. And then in situations where Kingpin's leadership is not effective on the crisis, then you might as well be unaffiliated, right? And I think that is the really strong incentive that's unique to them. That's why they're so commonly dual affiliated.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. And I'm interested to see how they do. Coming into the season, I thought Criminals was going to be very highly played, and they were. But
Hmm.
I actually rank Criminals as one of the better affiliations. It was one. I mean, we had multiple sessions where I was like, "Hey, Pat, I'm having trouble with this Criminals lineup. What do we think we can
Yeah.
do?" So it's something that I think you have to plan for, because when they're put in situations where they can succeed, I feel like they can be really oppressive, really optimized roster there.
Oh, I agree. I was this close to choosing Criminals as my team for the latest TTS season. I think they're great. And I personally was planning to play them without dual affiliating. I don't think they have to be dual affiliated. Um, we'll see. I know there's some people playing single affiliation criminals. I hope they do well, and they can show whether or not I was correct.
Yeah, 13 people are playing single affiliation. So, is there anything else from the affiliation breakdown that really caught your eye here, Pat?
Um, I think you covered the main points. I wanted to shout out a couple of less popular affiliations that seem to be taken primarily as dual. Like these are affiliations that don't have big numbers, but are very spread across different secondary affiliations, and that's Asgard and Inhumans,
Mm.
both taken in small amounts, but almost always taken as a dual affiliation with no consensus about who they're best to pair with.
Yeah, Asgard's an interesting one, right? I wasn't expecting them to be this popular. I don't even know, like, what are the popular Asgard characters anymore, right? We're really talking about Angela, right? Angela, I
Angela,
see a lot of
Enchantress, and
Space Loki.
Valkyrie.
Yeah, Valkyrie. That's another good one. I forgot about Valkyrie there.
Mhm.
Um, and then in humans, obviously, we talked about it. We both think Medusa's underplayed, but still, obviously, a really strong character. Like, I don't like in humans. Obviously, you've got to be bringing Black Bolt there, right? And then you need one more.
Yeah, both of these affiliations suffered from having their most powerful characters nerfed and not really having anything else improved in the update, right? So I think people have been turned off by them. They obviously have had their relative power level reduced compared to other affiliations when that happens, right? They just aren't as good as they were in comparison. And that stings. But I do think Asgard and Inhumans have some play to them. Their characters are powerful, their leaderships are really strong, they have good tactics cards. They're definitely underrated right now.
Yeah, and Asgard did get a slight buff, right? In the Doom Prophecy change, right? They
Mhm.
basically got a card unrestricted but restricted just to their affiliation.
Yeah, which is cool, and it's a good card. I hope some people get good use out of it because it has huge potential.
Yeah, so I think that wraps up the conversation we want to have. We hope you found it useful here. Thank you for joining us on YouTube. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. You can find all the numbers that we're using to break this down over on acrossthebifrost.com. In addition, we talk about the Season 7 TTS League in an upcoming episode of Across the Bifrost, which you, of course, can find at acrossthebifrost.com too. So we want to thank you all so much for joining us today. Until next time, everyone, cheers and happy gaming.